Okay, so this is the third podcast of Harbingers of the Sith'ari, and we got a lot of people on tonight. So I just want everyone to introduce yourselves in no particular order. So go for it.
This is Lynne.
Hi, I'm
Okay,
Jacob.
I'll start. This is Viccus.
This is Nadezh.
This is Ragnarok.
This is Radasvi.
This is Jaccob. I mean, what? I mean, no, this is Zara.
This is Jaccob.
There we go. We're off to a flying start. Okay. So I was like thinking like today, kind of like, thinking of questions to ask and all that. And one thing I realized is that we need like an opening intro, like a song for the podcast. And I thought an excellent idea would, to have a song and have it sung by Lynne.
There's no singing.
Oh, come on. we can
Singing's
make
not
it
allowed on Bent.
even for a podcast.
It's a rule.
Like no math.
It is a rule. No math, no singing, and what was the one we just added?
No
talking
politics while
politics.
drinking.
Yeah, no politics while drinking.
While drinking, but sober, it's okay.
And these are the kind of rules
We
that make
never
me
talk
proud to
about
be a
politics
Harbinger.
while sober.
So anyway, if for people who've like heard the podcast before, knows that each podcast has a theme, and with this podcast, the theme is going to be about the Scions, who a lot of you know, like especially if you're a Harbinger, they've been very close allies with us for a long time, and just recently, within a little bit more than a month ago, we had a merger between the two guilds. And that's why we have Radasvi, the Scion leader at the time, and Nadezh. So, Radasvi, I want you to maybe just give a brief explanation of like what the Scions were about, like their story and whatnot.
Okay. Well, the Scions started out as the idea is that we were pretty much a military outfit. Sort of hardcore imperial loyalists, at least that was the initial premise. Initially led by a leading Sith who we, RP is a member of the Dark Council for our within our story arc. And the idea was bringing together Sith and non-Sith in one Imperial Loyalist organization. So, and a lot of our RP, our arc prior to the merger was revolved around things like conducting special missions for that were commissioned us by the Emperor's Guard, because our part of our theme was that the premise was that we were personally loyal to the Emperor and not to the scheming, not to any of the various other interests that were part of the imperial regime. And so then that kind of led us into things like, following, pursuing our arms smuggling rings. We got bogged down in Alderaan. RP that we were kind of placed sort of in a position of authority on Alderaan, supposed to clean it up for the Emperor, and that's where things started to fall apart, in characterly, within the arc for us, and we got bogged down, and and it kind of came to things deteriorated when the character who was our leader, the Scion leader for a long time, Shalmanazar, there was sort of civil strife, and there was a faction of the Scions that wanted to oust Shalmanazar, and that prompted Shalmanazar to become increasingly paranoid and, to take kind of kind of, well, I wouldn't, not, he was always pro-Sith, but anti-non-Sith kind of added stances and things like that. And so, and, my character was, and a couple others were kind of caught in the middle of all that, trying to hold it all together. So we had all kinds of tensions until finally it broke out into a Scion civil war, and Shalmanazar was killed, and that's what led us into and characterly that leads, that heads off towards the merger, which was great. And the Harbingers were, of course, a part of that at several crucial points, especially in the Civil War. They saved the Scion's rears.
You mentioned the character Shalmanazar. Was he only a character that was mentioned in the game for RP purposes, or did someone actually have the tune with that name?
I'll let Nadezh talk about that.
Yeah, Shalmanazar was my original tune. I RP'd him, like Radasvi said, as a member of the Dark Council, and he basically, with Radasvi and a couple others, started the Scions in an attempt to, well, ostensibly to create a kind of an elite corps for the Emperor, but originally, secretly it was really just him building up his power base, his personal power base. So he always had, selfish motives.
It's kind of interesting because like you said, originally the Scions were this group that only answered to the Emperor. Their sole reason for existence is that they couldn't be, compromised. Yet they ended up being compromised within, with Shalmanazar.
Yeah, he was always, like Radasvi said, he was always, pro-Sith, and really a Sith, supremacist, but he saw value in working with others like Radasvi, who's an agent. But as time went on and he became more unpopular among the Scions, that's when he kind of, it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, actually, because a lot of Scions thought that, he was, gonna, betray them or, turn against them in some way. And he wasn't going to until they did that. And then he became increasingly paranoid. And, eventually he just turned on half the Scions. He, got a small group that he kind of manipulated into following him. And then he went after Radasvi and several others.
So, who was maybe the original guild master of the Scions? Was it Radasvi? Was it Shalmanazar? Was it sort of a dual partnership? I mean, not in an RP sense, but with the formation of the guild.
I'm sorry. So you mean out of character, Lynne?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, out of character, Radasvi and I have always worked closely together. Obviously, we had to have two other people join us initially in order for us to form the guild. But Radasvi was always, even when I was, technically the guild master, he was always right there with me, and especially, when I was out for long periods of time, he for all intents and purposes, he was the guild master for that time.
Okay.
But work together on the RP and develop the RP and stuff, and things kind of came together with with the as far as the idea that when we realized that it was probably best if my character were were in charge, that kind of played together with that led us to the Civil War idea, and the Civil War, without intention, without that being the intention, the Civil War led us, and the death of Shalmaneser led us into our relationship, and characterly the Scion's relationship with the imperial government deteriorating to the point where in characterly merging with the Harbingers was the logical move.
So in the last podcast, I asked Viccus, like where he got the idea for the Harbingers, how was it formed? So how did it work with you guys? Did you guys just brainstorm together? Did you just bump into each other in game and say, hey, you want to make a guild? Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, pretty much. I was the first person that Nadezh asked to join a guild, and then we kind of came up with the concept together based on the fact that I was talking about our characters, and the fact that I was an agent, what my character was like, willing to serve the Sith, respecting the Sith and all that, and then what his character was like, and we just kind of worked together. We worked together to set up all of the initial stuff before, the initial added character structures and everything, before real life kind of, you get one or the other of us busy. It was all kind of set it up, mostly together with some input from, a few of the other early members who are, long gone.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way with guilds. It's the process of the guild. It's like a revolving door. It's the roster's constantly changing. But how did the actual idea, the actual RP idea for the Scions come about?
Which particular part of it?
Well, just the very idea, the way you explained it, how they were a group that just solely answered to the Emperor himself, not to any other Sith.
Well, we can well, I'll let Nadezh comment on this too. I mean, for my part, the perspective I brought to it was that my character being a Chiss, and the idea that he kind of studied, was kind of an relatively impartial observer of galactic Sith and Republic politics and the differences in their systems of government and all that, and that was part of his backstory, and his philosophy. My character's political philosophy was that he in the ascendancy, the Chiss ascendancy, there's a lot of backstabbing, not usually taken to the extremes that sometimes the Sith Order might take it, groups in the Sith Empire. But his idea was that, kind of a reaction against that, and against what he saw in the Sith Empire and in the Republic, kind of looking, critiquing all three of those things. His philosophy was that, we'd be best served, was that the Empire and the galaxy would be best served if there's one, if people acknowledge, have kind of a personal loyalty to each other, and ultimately to, a sovereign, like a figurehead, like the Emperor, and have, kind of the idea of personal loyalty juxtaposed with the Republic, and the idea, institutional loyalties and that kind of thing that is in the Republic, and also, versus the kind of selfish or the infighting that you see in the Ascendancy or in the Sith Empire. So that's where my character came. That's what I kind of brought to it.
Yeah. From Shalmanezer's. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking? I'm sorry. I didn't hear anything.
No, go ahead.
Okay. From Shalmanezer's perspective, it was really just, kind of like what I said. He wanted to build his personal power base, and in order to do that, he realized that he needed to, although he was, kind of a Sith supremacist, he realized that, of course, in the Empire and the galaxy as it is, he needs to work with non-Sith. And Radasvi was a capable Imperial agent and willing to cooperate and collaborate with him. So so they joined up. Out of characterly, we actually spent quite a while, as I remember, trying to think, work out the details of the RP, trying to figure out how would it work with our two different characters, how, in what way, could we rationalize, making a guild and characterly? Because, we wanted to make a guild, but, we wanted to have strong RP. So we actually, debated for a while about, the premise of the guild. But it was a fun process. But yeah.
Yeah, kind of what I think part of that was, out of characterly wanting. I think what Nadezh was getting at there too. I think part of what we considered explicitly was wanting to be able to found a guild that included all classes and everything, but still somehow made in character sense. Was somehow in characterly rationalized. So that all played into it too.
I think one of the reasons why...
Hey Zara,
Yeah, go ahead, Viccus.
I actually just have a quick question while we're on this subject, if you don't mind.
Yeah, like, you know what, anyone, if you feel like, pitching in at any time, like, go right ahead.
This is more for Nadezh deck. The Harbingers have, we used to be really closely aligned with the Empire, the Dark Council. But somewhere along the line, the Dark Council decided that our motives were against their goals. We contradicted what they were trying to accomplish, and they decided that we were enemies of the Empire. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that my character Viccus would actually go to the Dark Council quite frequently, and he would speak with them and stuff, and a lot of them really didn't like him. That's part of the story, and that's part of the reason why we were so antagonized in the first place. It's that it goes back to that tradition that the Sith have. If one person is corrupt, then everyone in their chain of command is corrupt as well and needs to be destroyed. Anyone who is familiar with Thanaton knows that. So the question that I have, knowing kind of what our stance is, what our goals are and everything, what would Shalmanazar's position have been? Because the council was divided. Some people were opposed to the idea of, some people were harshly opposed to this group who were trying to find this Sith'ari person when the Emperor is the rightful person, and just you looking for him is a crime. You looking for someone who is supposed to be sitting on the throne instead of the Emperor is a crime, while others were a little bit more, I guess, lenient. They didn't see any immediate threat, and maybe even saw value in keeping Viccus alive at the time because of his past. He was a little different.
I'd say Shalmanazar wouldn't really care about the Sith'ari from a, cult religious perspective. Like, he wouldn't care, he's, the Sith'ari is supposed to be, is this prophesized, Sith that's supposed to, do all this stuff, and I don't think he would really care about that element of it, if that makes sense. Politically, he would just see the Sith'ari and the harbingers of the Sith'ari as a hindrance in imperial victory. I think he'd see it, see the organization as a waste, because there are a lot of powerful Sith, and there are others, powerful non-Sith as well, but he's mostly concerned about the Sith. Powerful Sith who aren't working with the council and the empire as a whole, as closely as they should be. And I think that would be his take on it, because when it comes right down to it, he doesn't even really care that much about the emperor. Like I said, I mean, essentially he's like a sociopath, right? So he really just cared about himself and his own personal power. The emperor is the leader of the empire. The empire, he sees the empire as the dominant force in the galaxy, and so following the emperor and staying with the empire as a whole gives him the best chance of gaining personal power as well. The Harbingers, he wouldn't necessarily dislike them under normal circumstances, but seeing them as a splinter group, it's just like the losing side, the underdog, and Shalmaneser is not really one to go for the underdog.
But at the same time, he didn't really strike out at us, so maybe there was kind of there's kind of an element of, whatever's a thorn in the Emperor's side, secretly an advantage to Shalmaneser.
Actually, I think Radasvi and I kind of talked about that a bit, in the weeks leading up to his demise. Radasvi was kind of, and Radasvi, you can, add to this or correct me if my memory is off here, but the way I remember it is Radasvi was actually kind of covering up, the trail, so to speak, of the Harbingers. He was, obviously the Harbingers and Scions were kind of allies, even before Shalmaneser's death, but Radasvi was kind of hiding that fact from Shalmaneser, because, like I said, Shalmaneser would probably have sent someone or a group of Scions or of non-Scions after the Harbingers, if only to gain more prestige in the eyes of the council. But obviously he as a member of the Dark Council, he was aware of their presence and I mean existence, but he didn't really see them as much of a threat because in his view, unless the Sith'ari showed up, it wasn't really going to matter. And if the Sith'ari is as powerful as the prophecy says, and he did show up, he would probably join the Sith'ari. So yeah, I think that's what Radasvi and I kind of worked out.
Yeah, it's that's interesting.
So does that answer your question, Viccus?
It does. Sorry, I had to ask that. The thought occurred to me when he mentioned that he was a member of the Dark Council. It's interesting how the stories intertwine.
The thing I noticed with the two guilds, with the two groups at the time, like the Scions and the Harbingers, and anyone can correct me, if they think I'm wrong, but I think one of the reasons why we got along so well, even out of character, is that we both had very unique backstories. I mean, majority of the guilds out there, it's just about being power hungry. It's just oh, I'm a Sith, I want to rule everything type of thing. Where I think with both guilds, they treated the storylines more realistically, and I think it's because of that uniqueness that we got along so well. I don't know if anyone agrees with that or not.
I think there's probably something to that, as far as, at least I know my sense of the Harbingers is always that there was some thoughtfulness, behind the backstory. I didn't really pry too much into the, details of y'all's backstory until later on. But yeah, I mean, just looking around, what, definitely kind of surveying the other guilds back on Captown server, the other RP guilds, I mean, a lot of them were. I think some of us have talked about this. A lot of them are, they're fun. They're fine for what they are, I'm sure. But a lot of the themes tended to, either very, how do I say? Well, there were a lot of like outright criminal organizations as such, not not that we were involved in some illicit activities in characterly, but just outright criminal organization or things like that, groups that we wouldn't really have any interest have had any interest in. Honestly, I think that a big part of why we got along so very well was just that we didn't, well, on our part, we didn't pry too terribly much into the Harbingers' motivations, and we were, we developed a lot of the personal relationships through casual RP, kind of one-on-one or in small groups, and that kind of, I think that helped a lot. I think that probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, definitely. Lynne and Jacko, you guys are quiet, and I'm going to throw you into this now. So it's like a majority of the Harbingers who are listening to this know that, yes, there was like a merger with the two guilds like about a month ago, but a lot of it was due to you two. I mean, there was like a lot of negotiations going on, which you two were a part of. I mean, you two were pretty much like, I guess, like the liaisons or ambassadors of the Harbingers. And I'm wondering, I mean, I know you can't divulge too much details because no doubt some of it is sensitive, but is there any, I don't know, good stories like during that time frame, like while negotiations were going on?
I think the best story is just how it started. Several of us had talked before and mentioned in passing that it would be nice to have the Scions in the guild and to just be one guild. And Jacob and I had talked about that quite frequently. And we have a saying that the best time to be on vent is between 2 and 5 a.m. because that's when the best stories get told. And it happened to be between 2 and 5 a.m. and Jacob and Radasvi and I were on Harbinger's vent. And Jacob just happened to toss out something about the fact that wouldn't it be nice if they just all joined us, and they should join us. And that is how the talks started. Of course, we spent the next 3 hours talking about how we could make that happen, and it just went from there. What do you think, Jacob?
It was an interesting story, yeah. It was a long conversation that I remember because the sun had started coming up, and I looked outside and I was like, the birds! I don't even remember most of the conversation, if you want me to be honest. I just remember throwing out that, hey, Radasvi, you guys should come with us.
So
I gotta give you credit, Jocko. There's a lot of there were a lot of jokes made about Jocko in the beginning. He was kind of a pun within the guild in a good way. He was just a comic relief, one of those characters. And but he has actually turned into quite the diplomat. And who would have thought that he would actually have caused all of that to happen? So I think that I feel like that's very appropriate. I like how it turned out.
I have to say, thank you, Viccus, first. Second, for interesting stories, I think this one was my favorite. Was something had happened, and Lynne had brought up the point that Jaccob started this whole thing. And my first thought was, I did? Oh, right, I did. I'd completely forgotten at that point.
So, Radasvi and Nadezh, what was it like what happened, like when, like, say, like Lynne and Jacko, like, approached you, like, with the idea?
Well, again, it was less of an approaching with the idea and just more like, yeah, we were hanging out on the vent, the three of us, you know, for the, however many at the time. And he was like, hey, why don't you just join us? I'm like, yeah. And they were like, yeah, I really like that. It's something, it's really, it was less of an approaching thing and more just we had all been thinking the same thing for quite a while. For many of the same reasons and probably some slightly different, but yeah, it was sort of a natural move. And so when I, over time bounced off one, and the other of the, other Scions, it's, yeah, I mean, it was just, for the most part, it's just, the reaction was that it was just kind of a natural thing. But, I certainly felt that way. I've been, yes, that the thought, I will not pretend that the thought had not crossed my mind many a time for quite a while prior to that evening.
I actually,
go ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say, I actually remember Radasvi's exact words. He said something along the lines of, okay, maybe not his exact words, but the gist of what he was saying was like, I've been thinking this exact same thing. I'm so glad that you guys are too.
Yeah, and then at a different point, he said, oh, Nadezh and I, we really want this to happen. And so it was really nice because at that point, we were just tossing about the idea and we hadn't presented it to anybody. And so it was really kind of good to know that there were others in the Scions that had kind of the same thoughts. And it was also kind of surprising to know that there were others in the Scions who had the same thoughts.
Well, I think one of the things that, sorry, as I was saying, I think one of the things that made the transition so easy, plus, the idea of being so open to everybody was, we did, whenever it came for an ops group or world boss raids or whatnot, this, the Harbingers didn't have the manpower to do it. And so, whenever we'd be doing things like that, it'd be with the Scion, so we were already hanging out together, playing together, and everything else, so it just seemed like a natural transition,
Yeah, and, I just wanted to say that, Radasvi and I, before, I guess, Lynne, Jaccob and Radasvi kind of, entered into negotiations, Radasvi and I talked, or I guess talked's not the best word, tossed around the idea, not really seriously, more wistfully, the idea of joining the Harbingers. We're like, I just remember one time I was like, wouldn't it be nice if we could join the Harbingers? Like, Radasvi was like, yeah, that would be nice, but we didn't bring it to you guys, and I just remember that the day after or a couple of days after, the initial talk, that took place, with Lynne, Jaccob, and Radasvi, I almost jumped with joy. I was just so excited, like, finally, can join the Harbingers.
I think some of the other council members will remember what I'm talking about when I say that while you guys were thinking that, we're on the other side of the fence like a month or two before it happened, going, I wonder how long it's going to be before we all just become one big thing, because we can kind of see it coming. It's just, and we want it to happen, but we don't want to say it because that's unprofessional, and what if you say no and all this, and it's really awkward, and we kind of have to just sit and hope that it happens and wait for the opportunity that Jacco seized successfully. And but we've all been thinking it for the longest time on both sides of the fence.
That's very true, and I can further comment on what Viccus was saying about us. We had even laughed and joked and made little bets. How long do you think it will take before we're all one. Um, so apparently it was something that we all thought about, and none of us really were ready to bring it up.
Yay, Jaccob.
Indeed. Yay, Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob, it's all you, buddy.
I got my one moment. I'm happy.
So yeah, I mean, like we talked about how, like the two guilds have had like a long history together, but there was a time when the two guilds were in existence and had no or little idea of each other. And I remember, like early on in the guild, Viccus, I remember you were kind of going out, acting as I guess like a diplomat to like establish relations between guilds. I don't know if you remember this at all.
I was. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, for Radasvi and Nadezh, I don't know if you guys were a part of it or not. I honestly can't remember. But I had created a... it was called the Confederation of Guilds. And I was going around talking to anyone and everyone in as many guilds as I could find. I'm not joking. This is what I would do. I would log on. I would bring up the fleet population list back on Cathound when it was reasonable to look through the entire population. And I would sort by guild, and I would just go through and be like, I haven't spoken to that guild yet. And I would whisper one of their members, and I'd be like, hey, I'm going around talking to as many guild leaders as I possibly can. I have an offer that they would like to hear. And is there anyone I can speak with? And that's basically what I would say to every one of them. And I would try and get in touch with the highest up person I possibly could, and I would introduce myself as the leader of the Harbingers of the Sith'ari, and then I would offer them a place in a just this new community that I was trying to start up, Federation of Guilds, basically a private channel created with the same name that they could join, and only guild leaders or okay, let me back up just a hair. Each guild was allowed one person, one representative they could send, typically the guild leader, but it didn't have to be. And they would go and join this channel. So 90% of the population of this custom channel that I was making was guild masters, or like the right hand that was kind of acting guild leader or whatever. And that way we could all talk together, just the guild leaders, and coordinate. The purpose was to coordinate events and things, inter-guild events. Be like, hey, we're an RP guild and we're looking for another guild to, fight some pubs or something, and do some war zones or whatever for a story involving this, and that was the idea. And then another guild leader could speak up and be like, yeah, we'd be interested in that, and or PvP or what have you. That was the idea. And most people love the idea. They were like, oh, that is fantastic. We've always wanted something like this. And but it ended up kind of falling through because people weren't talking a whole lot. I got quite a few people in there. I got like a dozen people in there, and people just weren't talking a whole lot. And there are bugs in the custom channels that kick you out automatically. Rag knows about that. But yeah, that is something that I attempted a long time ago, and even though it didn't succeed, there were a lot of guild masters and things that gave me props for trying to better the community. I even had some turn me down because of political differences. Oh, that guild is in there? We're not part of that. And I kept assuring them, it's not an alliance, this is just a community. But some people just wouldn't have it, but yeah, I got lots of thumbs up for that, and because of that, we got our name out. People knew. I knew that would happen if I went out there and did that. I kept throwing our name around. We are putting this together.
So when you, I don't know, have like a mental picture of like when you like approach like the Scion leadership, of just like going, hey, want to be my friend? I'm sure it didn't go down like that.
I honestly don't remember approaching Radasvi about the idea. Did I?
I did get a tell one day about that. I think. I don't know. I don't remember whether you directly sent me something or whether it was you passed it along through Lynne. But yeah, I was in there. and like you said, I mean, and that's it. I think you said it really well. It was. The gesture said something, even though not much happened with it. And on the rare occasions when I did try to like say hot hey to someone, and I usually wouldn't get a response back. But it was the gesture said something.
Yeah, I consider it a success, even though it did not succeed. I consider it a success personally, that I actually followed through with this thing. I talked to just about every guild.
Honestly,
and because of that,
Go ahead, Viccus.
Because of that, I knew a lot of the other guild leaders. I could be walking along in the fleet, and I would see someone, and I'd, hey, I know that guy just from my diplomatic stuff. So, you form a lot of relationships and earn some pull when you do stuff like that, and you earn a good reputation in people's eyes for trying to better the community like that. And that's actually where I knew the contact for. You guys remember speaking to the people who were Harbingers at the time, you guys remember that one guild that was had those people doing the ERP on fleet, and you guys were talking in guild chat, oh my god, this is disgusting, there's some people on a fleet doing ERP stuff, and we've asked them to leave and they're not leaving and everything. And you remember what I did? I don't know if Radasvi was aware of this, and the Nadezh deck, I don't know if they were aware of this, but I was like, what guild are they? And someone said their guild, and I was like, hold on a second. And I went to my mailbox, and I mailed their guild leader, who I knew from this diplomatic stuff, and I said, hey, it's me. There are a couple of your people doing this and this and this, and some of my people have asked them to stop. And I told them the story, basically. And I just said, you know what, I thought I should let you know because I would want to know if my people were doing this. And I got mailed back like 2 hours later saying, thank you, I will handle that.
I was gonna say I think the first real encounter that I had with the Harbingers was back very early on. I believe I crashed one of y'all's meetings. Meaning I hung around. I got insulted by Ragnarok, I think it was, in character. I think I cracked some jokes with Tiva, who I think was actually played by Tiva at the time. Cracked some jokes about how y'all seemed like Jedi, just about how the Sith were just droning on and on and on. Some good stuff like that. But I think that was, unfortunately, I think that was the first contact I had with y'all. But it overall it left a positive impression on me that y'all were actually organizing things. Even pretty early on, you could get that size of a group together. It was about 10 of y'all at the time, and that you could get that size of a group together doing something at a time when our guild, with the Scions, were almost negligible. It left an impression.
So yeah, sorry, I just want to rewind just a little bit. I didn't want to disrupt the flow of the conversation, but obviously I am now. But so like these people that were ERPing, were they actually Scions?
No.
No. I forget what guild they were, but it's not important. I never heard from them again. But just some no-name guild. But I mailed them, or I mailed their guild leader, who I knew from all of that diplomatic stuff, and then he mailed me back, and I could tell he was quite embarrassed by it. And that was the last we saw of that.
I actually remember the guild's name. But I remember random stuff. I think they were called the Sicilia Syndicate.
The Scylla Syndicate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember
They were
those guys.
chips.
That was them.
And I don't think they made the transfer. Or if they did not reform that guild.
I remember that Radasvi
Right.
commented that he was somewhat less than impressed by that particular guild. Especially because they claim to be, from, Scylla.
I have an interesting story about them. I mean, I can say it now. I mean, like, they're no longer together, so it's not like, I'm going to offend anyone, like any like former members that come across this. But one time I was on in the German Cast Cantina, and I was like in the upstairs portion. I was doing like some RPing, and there was like a group of them, like downstairs. And in the beginning, it was me and a couple of recruits. Like I was just kind of like doing a little RP exercise with them. And then I sent them on their way, like on a sort of like a mission. I kept contact with them, through, through like a team chat. And anyways, I went upstairs, and then I could even though upstairs, like I could still like hear them, like their texts, like they're emoting and that, and they were like calling us like snobs and that just because like we wouldn't hang out with them, and it's just like, oh well, whatever. But yeah,
That's kind of
in my
funny
head.
because... I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think it's kind of funny that anyone would call the Harbingers snobs because we always hung out at the cantina, and anytime anybody would walk by or walk up, we would just start talking to them. So to me, that's just kind of funny that they would say that.
Well, I think like the reason why they called us snobs is just because we were just like like chatting like within ourselves. Like I was explaining an exercise and whatnot, and we just like from an outside point of view, it looks like we're just like standing around each other, just like not talking to anyone, right?
Perhaps.
But anyway, I'm looking at the time, and man, this is like probably like the longest podcast we've ever had. So I think I should probably wrap it up, just because it's going to be like a bitch to like upload to YouTube tomorrow because of the file size.
Force babies.
No.
Had to slip that in there. I'll actually ask one last question if you don't mind.
No. Go ahead.
Radasvi and Nadezh deck, just in general, I know I've asked you this before, but just for the record, what is the overall impression after the transfer?
The overall impression was that it was, that I've gathered and that I've sensed is just, once we actually got to the point, decided, all right, this is when we're going to do it, and we, I let the, others, the Scions at large know, some individually, and then the rest as a group, when we had that meeting. Decisions were made very quickly, and things that we had talked a lot about just sorted themselves out naturally, real quick. So a lot of the details, and Lynne and Jaccob and everyone, helped to, sort a lot of those things out. And it's just, I think going back to the idea that it was just kind of a natural thing for most of us, especially those of us who, the majority of the active Scions who came over. It's some of us were, had hung out and, done, various types of events with the Harbingers for so long that it was natural. And then also we have this group of people who are very new Scions who came over, who, because of the, all of the activities that we were doing together, they really just, they knew when the merger happened. We had some folks who knew a lot of the Harbingers better than they knew a lot of their fellow Scions. So, one way or the other, it was a very natural thing, and I think people are, settled down pretty quickly and are pretty pleased. I had, and actually one, just as a final thought for me, we had one Scion of very long standing and one of the brand new Scions both say to me individually that, it always seemed like one big guild anyway. So.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, did you want to say something, Viccus?
Oh no, go ahead.
I mean, like Radasvi said, it was just a natural move, and I it's a great community with the Harbingers. A lot of nice people, great RPers. So it was a really, I mean, I think that it was the best move that the Scions as a group made ever since joining. I mean, ever since forming the Scions. Joining the Harbingers was just the best thing that we could do. And I'm really impressed by the structure of it. It's built for longevity. It's built to last and to function. A lot of guilds, and including the Scions, the way that it was originally structured, too much was put on like one or two people, and that's not the case here. It's the way it's designed is everyone can have fun, including the leaders. They can actually play the game. So yeah, it's just it's great to be with the Harbingers. Yeah. So thank you, thanks for joining us, having us join.
Yeah, that says a lot coming from. That says a lot coming from the former co-guild leaders and all. So, thanks.
Thank you.
So this will conclude our podcast. So this is me, Azara, signing off. And Lynne in the background, mumbling "Force Babies."
Wait. Before we sign off, I have to say that there's a player on Fleet named McLovin, and that makes me laugh.
And this is Lynne saying see ya.
Jaccob saying goodbye.
There's Rag being quiet.
Rag saying bye.
Radasvi saying thank you and goodbye.
The Nadezh saying take care, guys.
This is Viccus. Later.
And did we miss anyone?
You?
No, I said bye. I was the first one.
Oh, okay. What are we still doing here?
I don't know. Okay, so yeah, bye.